So I wanted to take a few minutes to talk a bit more about the rubric because I think our evaluation methods and our evaluation are in a kind of dialogue. We know that the tools we're using to try to evaluate our situation aren't perfect, and we also know that we're trying to think about our partners and what they're doing and how to evaluate them, and that's also not perfect, our perspective on those. But those two sides of the problem, how we evaluate and what the evaluation is, they're pushing against each other to try to improve on both sides. And I wanted to talk about how I think we might improve the rubric and to make it better for our purposes, to make it a better tool. But I want to start again with the idea, and I think it's important to keep in mind, even when we look at a spreadsheet, is we're talking about a learning loop, a learning cycle. And one stage of the cycle is about action. One stage of the cycle is about listening and studying and watching and getting information. One stage of the cycle is reflecting, and that's where you go a bit further than just studying, because now you're questioning your own assumptions. Not only getting new information, but reflecting and reconsidering the way in which you interpret that information, or the way in which maybe even you perceive the information. And then this other stage of the cycle is planning, right? So these 4 different stages of the cycle. Sometimes around this loop, maybe you don't need to reflect because the assumptions you already have are good enough. You can just take an action, study the results, and then improve the plans for next time. But then sometimes you will need to go to reflection. So all 4 is part of how we think about our process. And you need to keep that in mind when you go to the rubric, because the rubric isn't just about a grid or a spreadsheet on a page. It's about thinking about that process. And then in each of these 4 areas, the 4 areas are along the top, but just beneath them we have these columns. And I want to say a bit more about how to understand these columns, because I think what these columns are doing is picking out some part of that stage of a learning cycle, a transformation cycle, and identifying common mindset issues or blocks or just patterns of thinking and behaving that stand in the way of progress. And I think if you see it that way, maybe it becomes more clear. And also it becomes more clear what the rubric might be missing. Because again, the rubric is not perfect and we still need to improve it. But here's a different way of thinking about how the rubric might be weak or how we can strengthen it. So let me talk about these columns in that way then. So we have this action area, for example. And we've identified, Hope has identified in its own reflections and its own analysis, that one common problem for all of our partners is that they struggle to find the confidence to take the first move. They struggle to, when they wait for permission before they take an action, or they struggle to act even if their family has an objection or if the leader has an objection. Because we see that pattern as a problem, that's why we talk about initiative here, because that's what initiative is about. The confidence or the boldness, maybe even the courage to take a step before the authority approves of it, or before your family approves of it, or something like that. That's the idea here. Likewise with this one, collaboration, Hope has recognized that when people do act, they sometimes struggle to work together, to coordinate, to be willing to surrender some control so that someone else can participate. But when they do act, are they able to work together on things? If this is an issue, or because it's an issue, that's why there's this column here. But then you might also think, okay, are these the only 2 things when it comes to action that are big problems for lots of our partners, or big mental obstacles or mindset issues? My guess is that we might want to have more than two, and maybe these are not even the right two, but that's why they're here for now. Both initiative and collaboration is something that our partners struggle with, and it's something we try to help them with. Moving on then, when we get to the area of, or the stage of the cycle that's about listening, studying, observing what's going on, getting information, that kind of thing, we have these three columns here. Again, because these are areas where there are problems or where there are mindset issues. So in this area, this is about being willing to receive information and analyze it well. So to know how to deal with rumors or superstition, to be able to collect new information, and even to some extent to be able to analyze that information, to see flaws or to see problems and do some analysis. That's really what this area is about. It's about the quality of information. Are they able to get quality information? And that includes their own capacity to interpret and make sense of the information they have. This one, are they connected? It has to do with whether they're only getting information from their own group, their own circle, maybe their pastor in the church, or maybe just their family. But are they connected with other people who have different perspectives? Maybe it's young people, maybe it's women, maybe it's listening to their children, maybe it's being in contact with people from other ethnic groups. But it's about, are they able to see many different perspectives apart from their own national identity? So there's an aspect of this that has to do with, are they listening to other people with other perspectives? And really pressing on the question of, do they have connections with other perspectives? Do they have neighbors from a different ethnic group? Or are they aware of how Roman Catholics feel about this issue, and Buddhists, as well as Christians, and so forth? This has to do with their social connections, and how their social connections change what they know and the perspectives that they are aware of. And this last one, open, is really about, are they able to hear things they don't want to hear? Are they able to listen when they're criticized, or do they just get defensive? Are they willing to hear the perspective of people from different ethnic groups, for example? Basically, how are they willing to listen? That's a lot of what it comes down to. Okay. So again, these are the three columns that are there because they touch on problem areas or mindset issues that affect people's ability to be strong or to be healthy when it comes to learning new information and understanding their situation. Maybe these are not the right three areas. Again, that's a good way to think about it. Are these the most important mindset issues when it comes to their ability to gather information, be aware of their situation, and even to do some analysis on effectiveness? Now, if we go on to the next one, reflection. Reflection comes in when it's no longer enough to just look for improvements in your current process. It's when you have to rethink your fundamental assumptions. You have to rethink even the way that you've been listening, the way that you've been observing or studying or analyzing. That's where reflection comes in. And we have seen mindset issues at each of the three levels, and that's why those are here. When it comes to oneself, being aware of one's own emotions, the way that one gets into negative patterns, behavior dynamics, gets defensive about criticism, that kind of thing, but just a real understanding of oneself, that in Hope's analysis is an important issue for how they can be effective with others as well, but often it begins with the self, and so that's why it's here. And then relationships is about working with other people or other individuals. And then community is finally how they're able to reflect on their own role in social practice within the community, often at a larger scale. So when they're involved in situations beyond their own family, are they willing to question the assumptions of the conventional thinking in society and to express that in these public spaces? So again, these might not be the right 3 things to focus on. They may not be the right categories of things when it comes to the mindset issues for reflection, but that's what we have for now. And then this last one, this is the stage of thinking about the future and making plans and making preparations. And we have only 2 columns here. Forward thinking is mainly about, can they see the long-term priority? Can they see the long-term situation and not only prioritize what's happening today or the immediate need? Are they able to think strategically, for example? Are they thinking ahead about what's going to happen a year from now and not just about what needs to happen today? This is a mindset issue that we found with many people and many of our partners, and so that's why this is here. And then inclusiveness is, are you including different perspectives when you're trying to prepare for the future? When you're trying to make decisions, when you're trying to make plans, are you making sure that lots of different perspectives are involved? So this is similar to the openness or even the connectedness of observing and listening and studying. But what makes this special, or what makes this different from that area, is that this is in the stage of planning. So when it comes to preparing for the future, are you including people in the process of preparing for the future? That's what makes this inclusiveness different from the connectedness in observe, listen, and study, because the connectedness here is about the quality of information you're getting, or how well you're understanding your problem. And this one over here is about how people are involved in doing preparations and planning together. Okay? So you really have to keep both things in mind. You need to keep the full cycle, because that's how you can make the distinctions. And then you also need to think about, are these the right mindset issues to focus on for our rubric? I think in some cases they're not, and that's something we can improve on together. But this is how I'm trying to think about trying to improve this particular tool, and I thought maybe some of that discussion would be helpful in your own reflections.